I'm Steve. You might remember me from such videos as Mixing and Mastering Template or Ableton Live Beginner Guide by a bit of a beginner. And that'll be about it because this is my third video. How's it going? So today we're going to be looking at functional, simple music theory. Things that you can use in your music to create variation, to create depth, to get a different feel, add a little bit of flavour or spice to your music. Things that you can do that are really easy, but once you do them, you'll be like, I like that. I'm just going to get straight into it and I'm going to do this. Starting with a little bit of basic music theory, there's 12 notes in total, going from C up to the next C, and everything you play is a combination of those 12 notes, just in different octave ranges across the scales. We're going to look at two main scales today, major and minor. So the major scale, lovely, sounds like that. The minor scale sounds like this. Now you'll notice here that this is it's actually the A flat major scale, although Ableton for some reason does the G sharp scale, which is a little bit silly because G sharp has got an F double sharp in it, which all comes from notation the way you write music. You have to write music as A, B, C, D, E, F because you've got the lines on the page telling you what the notes are. So to have a double sharp, that F is actually a G, but it's called F double sharp. So it's a theoretical scale. It doesn't really exist, so sort it out, Ableton. You'll notice that every major key, you'll notice that this minor scale here is, it says E flat, but it's actually F minor. Now that's got exactly the same notes as the relative minor to A flat minor or G sharp minor as it's shown up on there. So each major scale has got a relative minor, exactly the same notes. So the emphasis that comes from it is basically the note that you start on, the note that you play, what your root note is. That tells you whether the scale is going to be major or minor. It can be a little bit confusing because that kind of got me a little bit when I was learning these things many years ago. Just to mess with your head a little bit, everything that we do, everything we make, synthesize, everything that we play is made up of a combination of sine waves. So this piano, that sine wave there is the fundamental, that's the lowest frequency. You can kind of ignore that because that's just general noise from the recording of the piano. And you'll see the other things up there are the harmonics. That gives you the timbre of the sound. The harmonics dictate what the sound is going to be like, but they are just a combination of sine waves spaced in certain intervals up there. So think of your sine wave like they used to think of the atom as the building blocks of life, and it's now a quark or whatever else exists in the quantum realm. That is your sine wave. It's a quark. Quark. Little bit about chords. I presume everybody knows this, but let's just talk about it anyway. Chords are made up of 3 notes. They have to be 3 notes because if they're only 2 notes, then they don't really tell you what it is. They're nice, but they don't tell you what a chord is. So we need 3 notes to make a chord. We have a basic major chord here, which has got an interval of 4 spaces and then 3 spaces, or if you're looking at the scale, the notes are in the scale, it's the 1st, the 3rd and the 5th of the scale. Minor chord, likewise, in the minor scale is the 1st, the 3rd and the 5th. So if I change this scale here to minor, it's the 1st, the 3rd and the 5th in the minor scale. But you have a spacing of 4 and 3 for a major, 3 and 4 for a minor. You can extend these chords with different things. So if I switch back to the major scale, you'll see that we have the 1, the 3, the 5 and the 7. That makes it a 7th chord. And you can take that 3rd note, move it down 2, and we've got a suspended 2nd. Now you can also go a little bit higher. Gets a little bit silly though when you get a little bit further up. That's an 11. But if we put that onto the 9, that still works, still sounds quite nice. And again, if we move that 3rd and take it up to the 4th, that is a suspended 4th. So a lot of these things you can do with chords are basically, this is all diatonic, this is all playing within the scale, and these are chords that we can make within the scale. We'll kind of cut it there because otherwise you start getting into jazz stuff and then it can go sideways very quickly. So great thing you can do with chords are inversions. So an inversion, very simple. There's our basic chord. If I take that root note and move it up an octave, that's the first inversion. If I then take the 3rd and move that up an octave, that's the 2nd inversion. So the purpose of inversions is to change the feel of the chord, but you can bring everything back, if I undo those two, you can bring everything back to where it sort of sounds really good together. So this inversion there, and this is actually, this is the C sharp. So this is the fourth chord in the scale. So that is nice, but it's quite a big jump. So what we'd often do is change the inversion, knock it down an octave rather than up an octave, and it brings everything closer together. So if we start playing around with it, if we were to put this back where it belongs, up here, that's the chord, but it's quite, you might want to go up that high, but it's quite nice when you have an inversion and you can keep it quite close together. So you change the voicing of the chord. It's exactly the same chord, but it changes the voicing. So it's a nice little trick to use in your music to get things which have gone a little bit far out. You just use the inversions to bring them down, just knock successive notes down an octave until you get something that works. And you can also use this as a trick to say we've got exactly the same chords here, but if we say from there, it's a bit slower than it should be, this, isn't it? And it's coming around. These are the same chords, but they're just inverted. So you can actually do a complete repetition of your chord structure and change the inversions, and you're going to get a very different feel to the melody, different sound to it. So we have a total of 7 chords in every scale. These are the diatonic chords. So for simplicity now, we're out of that ridiculous hypothetical scale and we're just in C major. Nice and easy. Everybody can do this. So we've got 7 chords. The first chord is C major, and you can see that each chord, it's built on the next note on the scale. It's the first, the third, and the fifth, and then the E, the first, the third, and the fifth, and so on all the way up the chords. So we have the first chord is a major, the second 2 are minor, the fourth and the fifth are major, sixth is a minor, and the seventh is diminished, which has got a very tense sound to it, just because of the intervals. There's only 3 steps between each note in this, and then you're back to the tonic chord, the C. This happens for every single scale. It doesn't matter where I put these. If I select all of these, if I move them up, that is the E major scale. That's the F major scale. That's the G major scale. All of the intervals remain exactly the same, and just to show you there, we'll change that scale function to G major, and you'll see that we've got first, third, and the fifth in G major all the way up. So it's really easy to actually drag these things around and about. And then of course for the minor, we've got the relative minor, A minor of C, which is the 6th degree of the scale. The 6th degree of a major scale is the relative minor. It's got all the same notes in it. The chords are the same, but they're just played in a different order. So the emphasis is very different when you're playing with A minor. What you can note is that these are diatonic chord progressions. These are used throughout popular music, and everybody is pretty much diatonic these days because we've got things like the push. Can't really play out a scale, can we? So this is a 1-5-6-4 progression, incredibly popular and probably the most popular progression. You'll hear this all over the place. Forever. And this is a 1-5-6-4 with a different voicing. Just showing you what you can do again with inversions. You move some of the notes to bring everything close together, and you change the whole feel of the piece that you're doing. We've got a 1-4-6-5. Okay, I don't want to get copyright struck here, do I? So we've got a 1-7-6-4 in the minor scale, and again a minor 1-6-3-7. Now you can take a lot of things out of that diatonic progression. You can do a lot of movement, a lot of changes, you can move things around, you can get a lot of things going on within it, but you're always remaining diatonic. We call the first, the third, and the sixth the tonic. So the first obviously is the tonic because that is what the chord progression is based off, but the third and the sixth share 2 notes in common with this root chord, so they're tonic. Subdominant, so called because the subdominant is the 4th in the scale, but if you go down, that F to C there is a perfect 5th. The most, beautiful harmonic thing, etc. You think about your classical sort of church type music, that perfect 5th is a beautiful harmonic device to use. So it's a subdominant because the dominant is the 5th, and you've also got the second being a subdominant because it shares 2 notes in common here with this. And the fifth is the dominant, the perfect fifth harmony, beautiful, leads back to the first. And if you do a seventh on it, it's meant to lead back even more, that feeling of leading back, of wanting to resolve back to the root chord. So the one thing about being diatonic is that you can't really make a mess of things. If you keep within the same chord progression, I'll play this, lovely, and I'll play this arpeggiated synth. I can't really do anything wrong here. I can just hold down random notes on the push, and I'm always going to be in key. Doesn't matter what I really hold down, it's just staying nicely. If you start getting outside of the diatonic, you have to be a little bit more careful with your harmonies, but the diatonic is easy, especially if you're learning, because you cannot make a mistake. So you can do a lot of playing around and understanding of things in the diatonic scales. Now, consonance and dissonance, so you'll have your consonance and dissonance in the diatonic scale. Classic concepts. This is the tritone interval, the devil's interval. If I was better at video production, I would have a nice evil devil pop up and some like, oh, imagine that just happened. And that, oh, that's the shit there. And this is the interval of the first and the fifth of this is this is the interval of the first and the fifth of the diminished chord, which is the seventh chord in the C scale. Dissonance is also the two notes that are a semitone apart create a lot of dissonance. But I do like this sound. So this is a suspended fourth here. That dissonance there. The suspended second in this particular chord, that's the second there. Isn't quite as dissonant because it's a whole tone apart. So when we want to reharmonize, there's a few different tricks we can use to change the feel of a piece and move out of the diatonic. You have to be careful sometimes with the solo or things like that. So this, for example, is very simple. And here we've got a borrowed chord there. So this does not fit within the scale. So if I turn that scale on and get it to the right scale, you'll notice that note there, we're moving down to a minor that doesn't belong in the scale, but it's a nice little trick you can use just to change the feel of a piece a little bit. A borrowed chord is when you take something from the minor scale. So we're in C major and we want to borrow chords from that scale, the C minor scale. So we have a C major there and a minor, which is out of key, back into key, staying in key again, and then we borrow the minor again. And you notice we keep tonic here. And that's just horrible, so you probably wouldn't use it. But we borrow in these notes from the minor scale. Creates a little bit of a different feel to the piece, a little bit of tension. Now another thing we can do with the chords, if we keep with that same progression there, we can use chord substitution. So we keep two of the notes that are there and we change one of them to create another chord. So in this, for example, we've got the C, E, G, so I'll just move that C up here and you can see that we've got a 1, 3, 5 there. That's an E minor chord. So we've changed that C, and again for here, if we move this up, then we've got a progression going down. Brilliant. And I'm going to pop this up here. And we got that again. I mean, effectively, I'm just moving everything up here, but if I move that down, so that's the 1, 3, 5. Brilliant. And I'll put that up an octave. And then we put that up. So let's put that down. So again, we've got a 1, 3, 5, but we'll put the E up an octave to change it, make it an inversion. This is quite a cinematic chord. So we've got C, E, G, so we've got C major. So let's change the C and bring this, we'll change the C to E, G. to a B. And we'll make that an A minor at the end. Now I'm going to up the tempo here quickly on the push, just so we can get this a little bit pushed through. Helps if you actually change some of these as well, doesn't it? Well, not that down to a D. But you can see how we've changed it quite a lot from the original to get a totally different feel. Now we can change the scale as well. So our scale here is C major. We've got a few borrowed notes, but let's change it to a C minor. So that E has to come down to there. And again, we borrowed that, so we'll go up to it. Again, we want the 1, the 3, and let's make that the 5. The 1, 3 and the 5 for that chord, but that's there, so we'll move that up there. That's a 1, 3, 5, and we'll put that there so it stays within the scale. Again, we'll keep that sort of consonant within the C minor scale. 1, 3 and 5, so we're just making this into, I'm going to take that up there. Brilliant, that needs to go up, come down. So if we play this from the start. Needs a little bit of work, but you get the impression, you get the idea that we can mess things around and just move them, completely reharmonize the piece into a C minor. And you can do little bits here, little bits of that. You can use a few of the tricks that we picked up so far using inversions and completely change the feel of something. Now you can also do a lot of extensions. So here we go, if we keep this in C major, we'll just extend this chord out. We will add a 7th on there. We'll add the 9th on there, add a 7th onto that, and there. So if we play this, and so on. Imagine you can mix and match a little bit with your 4-note chords, and if you wanted to just keep some of them, so they weren't 7th chords, they didn't have that sort of, you can just take that, so I can put the C on the bottom there. So we're still a 3-note chord, but we're using 4 notes to reinforce it. So we're making much bigger chords and we're allowed to play with the 7ths. It lets you change things around, mix and match. Another tool you can use to change the feel of a piece to make it something different. We can mix cinematic chords as well, big chords spread across the keyboard. So if we play this as a basic A minor, and you'll see all we've done is spread out that A minor, and then we've spread it out and we've added the A, so it's still a 3-note chord, but it's just big. So we can also go a little bit further with this, again an A minor chord. Now we've added the 2nd, but that's a 9th, so if I had it down here, the B there, that would be a 2nd, but we've made it into a 9th chord. And now what we've done is we've taken that E and moved it up to a G, but we've put the G an octave up. And here we've taken the B down an octave, we've moved the C up an octave. So we've got the same 4 notes, but in a completely different voicing. So we're playing exactly the same chord, but it's just got such a different feel. You can get really creative with the cinematic chords. You can take it up a 5th from the top note, keep on adding 5ths, and you as long as you stay diatonic, you can even get out of the scale sometimes with these chords, because you kind of, your imagination is as much as you need. I mean, that's probably going to sound horrible. But again, it's a very tense thing. So if you're looking at cinematic, you'll have a real tension there. We can add up there. Put it down here. So just by spreading things out a little bit on the keyboard, you get this huge cinematic feel, and you can completely change the perception of the chords you're working with. I want to have a little look at the circle of fifths now. One thing I completely forgot to say here is this is all about using the circle of fifths as a compositional tool. Yeah, I didn't really mention it once, which was really intelligent of me. So, you know, you should probably print out a copy of the circle of fifths, keep it on your desk and use it as a reference tool because it's incredibly good. It shows you where you can go, what you can work around, how you can get from A to B to change key signatures, what chords share notes with other chords so you can move around them quickly. So this is just using the A flat. We're working from A flat and we're working around the circle of fifths in fifths, but we're using borrowed chords as well and we're adding bass notes so it doesn't quite sound too out of sync with itself. So in and of itself, it's a nice chord progression. So I'm going to use the circle of fifths to play a basic melodic thing. So we know that I'm going to have C in the middle, C, D, A, F, G, and we've got F and G are the neighbouring majors. So there we know. We'll put it into that's G major. And the relative minors are D minor, A minor, and E minor. So let's just duplicate that, and we want to go to not that middle one down. We'll make those minor, A minor and E minor. Now we can pretty much make a song out of just these chords. They all sort of work together. We can just play around, drag them into any order we want to. We can pop them down an octave. If you go on any of those three segments in the circle of fifths, you can build a song out of them really, really easily. But you can also use it as a reference tool then to go outside of that and say, well, what minors over there? What majors over there? And you can just start mixing and matching things. Have a little play around it. It'll give you a lot of musical ideas. I think if you use the circle of fifths as a start point, you can build up a track very, very easily because you figure out as a game, how do you get from there to there? How do you get from A to B? How do you get from this note to that note? How does that chord fit with that? On the opposite side of the circle of fifths, you've got your C major, which has got no sharps or flats, and then you've got your F sharp, which has got the most sharps. Say you want to move from C to D, they're only 2 steps away on the circle of fifths. So we know that they've got 2 notes in the scale that aren't the same. So it makes it quite easy to change to. If you want to have a little play around with it, you can use your melodic line as a device to get there. If you use the circle of fifths like this, you can play around with harmony, melody, and you can change things, and it helps you to understand, actually, I can use that chord in there. So let's use a chord from D when I'm playing in the key of C as a little bit of something different. So let's move that out of the way. We've got a C, and we know that C major is all the white notes, so let's go to D major. Now, if we move that C up, it's a little bit unsettling, a little bit messed up, but you can have a play around with that and you can say, well, actually, I can take a different chord from D, I can insert that in there, and then I've got 2 different scales that are getting mixed up, and I can pick my melodic line to go over the top of it, and it just takes it away from what everybody else is doing, makes it a little bit different. So I think that pretty much wraps us up. Hopefully I wasn't going too fast and you managed to pick up quite a few things that you can have a little play around with to introduce some difference into your music. So over to Steve on the couch. I hope you like what you've seen today. That sounds a bit dodgy. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, because it'll make me a very happy person indeed. And look what I'm like when I'm happy. Who doesn't want that? So yeah, thank you again, and I mean, I'll thank you a 3rd time. I'm really thankful. So hopefully this inspires you to go a little bit further with your music, start experimenting, just go off on a total wild journey, do what you want to do, have fun, be excellent to one another, explore, experiment, be at one with nature, the universe, and music theory. And I'll see you next time. I better do anyway, you know, because that'll be nice as well. You know, I don't want to sound threatening, but it'd be really nice to see you next time. You know, and it keeps my numbers up as well, which is really important at the early stages of a channel. So thanks very much. Bye. Yeah, you know, maybe I'll go that way for a bit of variety.